set. Yes, good morning, Lagos. Good morning, everyone, wherever it is you're listening from. This is Follow the Money brought to you by Nairametrics in partnership with UBA. I remain Ugo Dre. I hope you all had an amazing day December. Oh my God. Lagos and Nigeria in general was agog this December. It was just incredible seeing a lot of stuff online. I hope a lot of the things that we saw online weren't fake though. But I mean, going by a lot of all those pictures and videos that we see on social media, it looks like a lot of Nigerians had a swell time. Of course, this doesn't mean people didn't go through stress, especially people who had maybe a very difficult year or found it difficult to celebrate. But in general, it does look like Nigerians do know how to party hard despite a very difficult economy. But how can you can't blame us, really, right? I mean, how do you in one year? Nigerians are very resilient. Like in 1 year, we've basically gone through four price increases, fuel scarcity in 1 year, exchange rate depreciation of about 40% in 1 year, and inflation rate of over 34%. Just a whole lot of headwinds that Nigerians had to face in 2024, and yet, most of us did survive it, economically, I mean. And so here we are in 2025, looking forward to a much brighter year. And I'm sure that this year is going to be very great for everyone, especially if you make the right decisions early on. That's really what's important. And one of the decisions that you have to make early on is investing decisions. Have to make much better investment decisions in 2025. And the funny thing is that investment is not just about maybe investing in capital markets or financial markets or real estate and stuff like that. Investment can actually be you investing in yourself as well, which I actually consider as one of the best investments out there, because when you invest in yourself, then everything just falls in line. So, of course, this is Follow the Money, brought to you by Nairametrics, and here we follow the money, literally speaking. So, basically, just pointing you to where the money is, particularly in the capital market, with focus on equities. What a year it was for the Nigerian capital market. 2024 ended with the Nigerian All Share Index up 37.65%. So, in general, we did beat inflation rate. Yeah, so Nigerian stock market beat inflation rate and has been one of the best performing assets classes last year in the country. So, did better than even some of the fixed income securities that were at record levels last year as well. So a lot of people did make incredible amount of money in 2024 investing in equities. That's not to say some people didn't lose money, yeah, but I think more than lose, you had a lot of people who did make money, and a lot of investments in the stock market did very well. I'm going to run through some of the better performance last year so that you can have an idea of companies that did pretty well last year. But the All Share Index did very well. So it gained 37.65%, like I mentioned earlier. And this has been a 5-year gaining streak, in case you're wondering. Yeah, so the Nigerian stock market has gained for 5 straight years now, especially since COVID. COVID year was when this gain started. We gained 50% in the COVID year, and in 2021 6%, 2022 19.98%, 2023 catapulted to about 45.9%, almost more than double what we did in 2020. And then last year 37.65%. So equity is pretty doing well. And I know some people might want to say, look, okay, why don't you just adjust it for the exchange rate and let's really see. Yeah, I mean, if you adjust for the exchange rate, still not bad, if you ask me. So stock market doing pretty well, and the projections are that could also do well this year, as probably not as good as last year, but I do expect the market to still be robust this year. Let's remember, banks raised a considerable amount of money in 2024, and that money is going to find where to go, right? It's going to go right into the economy, and I do expect to see some of those things reflect in prices. And remember that the consumer goods sector took a bit of a beating last year, but I expect most of those stocks to bounce back this year as the exchange rate continues to remain stable. That's really a key driver. And once the exchange rate remains stable, you're going to see companies gradually get back, especially in the manufacturing sector and in the telco space as well. So, pretty good year for Nigerian stocks. And the funny thing is that if you go back in time, to how this all started. It all started, of course, in January last year, the first quarter of last year. The stock market, started doing pretty well, and from that moment, it kind of looked like, we probably weren't going to record any losses. Now, what is also interesting is the market. Also crossed, as the all share index crossed 100,000 points last year, right? So I mean, for those who follow the all share index, we tend to look at these things in point levels. At some point it was over 100,000, and then it fell during the year, and then as we got closer to the end of the year, we're just tracking it and wondering, are we going to actually go past 100,000 points? And yes, we did go past 100,000 points. Just to give you some perspective, as of January 2020, the all share index was less than 30,000 points. So just to give you an idea of where we're coming from. So it kind of looks like the stock market does pretty well when the economy is volatile, like when you think things are pretty bad. That is when the stock market tends to just ignite. And so we've gone from 30 something thousand, or less than 30,000 points in 2020 to over 100,000 points in 2024. And of course, we started the year at about 75 or so thousand points, and now we're closing at over 100,000. I think 100 and 102 or so thousand points in 2024. And if you also look at in terms of market capitalization itself, the stock market also closed at record levels, despite all the exits that we saw last year. There were a number of stocks that got delisted last year, but we also got some significant listing last year that did help the stock market. So market capitalization, that is the value of all the stocks on the Nigerian Stock Exchange, is now at a record 62.7 trillion. This was as of December 2024. So compare that to our GDP of about 200 or so trillion, you see that we are getting close. I mean, still pretty much a lot of room for growth, because in most countries, their market capitalization is usually larger than their GDP. Yeah, so you could see the total value of all stocks much higher than the GDP of these countries. So we're still less than 30% thereabout of our GDP, of our stock market as a percentage of GDP, but we did experience significant growth in 2024 at 62.76 trillion. That's the market value of stocks. Who knows? Maybe we might be hitting 100 trillion by the end of this year, or at least the next 5 years as things go on. Of course, what tends to happen is when you also have larger companies continue to list on the exchange, and then the ones that are on the exchange continue to grow, then you get closer to hitting those market capitalization levels. And so there are some listings that we're expecting this year. We heard that Dangote Refinery might list this year. So if it does list this year, as Aliko Dangote himself had mentioned, then expect a significant, addition to market capitalization. That refinery is probably about $20 billion or so. So that is in its own, that's over 30 trillion, isn't it? Or closer to 40 trillion even. There's over 30 trillion. So add that to the 60 something trillion, and you can see that we're already on our way to 100 trillion. So it's likely going to be another robust market this year. But how did the stock market perform compared to other African countries? Because we're just not on our own. There are also other African countries out there that also did remarkably well this year, and we did take a look at that at Nairametrics, and coming in fifth was Ivory Coast. That's Cote d'Ivoire. stock market. That stock market also recorded an impressive 29% growth in 2024. And so it's called the BRVM Composite Index. So that did 29% in 2024. So not so bad, right? For that exchange. And next was the Kenya or the Nairobi All Share Index. They also have a stock market in Kenya in case you're looking at where to invest in outside of Nigeria. And that stock market came in with a 33.7% year to date return for their investors. So did pretty well during the year for them. And they did face some headwinds in the Kenyan Nairobi index, but towards the end of the year, stocks rallied. See, it's very important to check these things because when foreign investors are coming into your country, they tend to look at Nigeria and other frontier markets to see how well their stock exchanges are performing. And so the ones that are performing pretty well are the ones that they often want to put their money in. So interesting to see that Ivory Coast was fifth, and then Kenya Nairobi All Share Index came in at the fourth position. And so guess who is third? Yeah, Nigerian All Share Index is third at 37.7%, like I mentioned earlier. And so they came in third position, 37.65, approximately 37.7%. So they came in third, right there, right just ahead of the Kenyan All Share Index. Now, next up is one country that I've been paying attention. I do see a lot of Nigerians putting some investment in that country. It looks like their All Share Index is also doing pretty well, and that's the Zambia Lusaka All Share Index. So that country's All Share Index came in second, gaining 44.1% year-to-date performance. East Africa. So you've got like how many East African countries already? You've got like two East African countries, Zambia and Kenya, doing pretty well in 2024 at 44.1% year-to-date performance. So that's one exchange that we're probably going to pay attention in this year to see whether they can keep up. Remember, you can't just put all your portfolio in one basket. Now we're in a global world, global economy, so you've got to be able to have portfolio investors or portfolio managers that can put your money in different exchanges so that you are, completely hedged on all sides. So you don't have to like face any major losses that can be covered from another investment. And so who was the number one, or which country came in number one as the best stock market of 2024 in sub-Saharan Africa? Drum rolls. Ghana. Yeah, Ghana was number one at 56% year-to-date return in fantastic numbers there from Ghana. And the funny thing is that Ghana did face a tough year last year with all the debt defaults and the political headwinds they all had. Remember, they had an election in December last year, so that was brought in a bit of uncertainty to a lot of people who weren't really sure what to expect from Ghana. But investors rewarded Ghana very well last year with 56%. Of course, they were able to sort out some of their debt issues with a deal with a bailout from the IMF that did help the economy. And so that sort of helped growth, and investors rewarded Ghana very, very well with 56% growth. So West African countries did well last year. So, and these are the countries that Nigeria is going to be competing with when it comes to capital. So Nigeria, Ghana, Ivory Coast, among the top 5 performing stock markets in sub-Saharan Africa in 2024. And of course, you also have Zambia and Kenya in there. Yeah, so we're going to take a bit of a short break. And when we're back, I'm going to give you the stocks that did absolutely well in 2025. This is a recap show. This is basically just looking at all the stocks that did well last year. And we're going to looking at all of them. And if we're done with the exchanges, and when I'm back, you're going to know the stocks that were the best performing in Nigeria in 2024. And let's see if the ones in your portfolio are amongst the stocks. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. If you're just tuning in, this is Follow the Money, brought to you by Nairametrics in partnership with UBA, and my name is Ugo Dre. We do this every Monday, 8 to 8:30 on this channel. Of course, you can listen to a recorded version of the show on Nairametrics YouTube channel. Just go to Nairametrics channel on YouTube, and you can get this particular show and previous ones as well. Of course, you can also get all the other amazing business shows we have on our YouTube channel. And of course, if you like to listen to things audio, you can also get us on Spotify as well. All right, so we've been looking at 2024 and how the Nigerian equities market did in 2024. A bit of a recap here, and we basically looked at the best stock markets in Africa and showed you Nigeria ranked third at 37 or so percent last year. All right, so in terms of stocks that did pretty well, there are a number of stocks that did well last year. So many good stocks in 2024. Of course, this was mostly driven by a number of things. One was the bank recapitalization that happened last year. That meant a lot of banks that were lowly priced had to have, investors gave them better price to earnings multiple, and so their share price did increase last year. We also saw a lot of push from insurance companies as well. Looks like a lot is going to be happening this year in the insurance space, and so most insurance companies did pretty well last year. And then there were also some market moves that drove stock market performance last year. So whether it's companies that were doing some kind of capital restructuring, or companies that had investors come in because of injection of fresh capital, all these things led to performance. And then there were companies that were also good at paying dividends last year, so fundamentals also drove their performance. There were so many good companies last year. And just to give you an idea of how well Nigerian companies did last year in terms of return on investment, we're gonna look at the top 10 performing stocks, and coming in at number 10, not number one, number 10 was Coronation Insurance. Coronation Insurance did 230% last year in terms of return, and so you can imagine this is a company that no one probably expected to do that well last year, and this is number 10 on the list at 231%. Of course, the company did 93% year-on-year increase in its insurance revenue to about 34 billion for the period, for just the first 9 months of the year. So even fundamentals as well backed Coronation Insurance, so no surprises there, and that investors did reward them greatly. This was a stock that started at about 0.68 or so, 68 kobo or so last year, and almost triple that number by the end of the year. And who knows? Is Coronation Insurance going to be right up there? You might want to continue to stick to the show to find out what happens to that stock. John Holt was next at number 9. John Holt really had this spurt towards the end of last year, and then just started growing. It's what we call a penny stock, but it did pretty well at 235% return in 2024 alone. So investors of John Holt did make a significant amount of money last year. And think about it, this is a stock that opened at about 2 naira 30 something kobo in 2024, and then rose to almost 9 naira by the end of the year. So solid for the company. Some would say one of the catalysts of the growth was announcement of a 2.4 billion pre-tax profit that they did last year compared to 1 billion a year before. So these things also aren't just gimmicks, right? So it looks like there were fundamentals that backed some of these price increases that you're seeing, and so investors appear to be rewarding stocks with high share prices or multiples of their earnings once they see that their earnings are actually growing. Now, next in line is not a penny stock, a very solid company that has solid grounds here in Nigeria, and that company is Julius Berger. So Julius Berger, returned 261% to its shareholders last year. So if you had Julius Berger in your portfolio, if that was even the only thing that you invested in last year, imagine if you had put 10 million naira in Julius Berger last year, you're probably going to have like 30 million naira in your bank right now, just by investing in Julius Berger. I don't think even FX did better than that last year. So for those who are thinking maybe FX is the best kind of investment, there are certain stocks that if you are picked, you probably will be doing very, very well. So Julius Berger did 261% last year. Sure, if you're listening to Follow the Money, who knows, maybe you'd have invested in some of these companies. So Julius Berger also driven largely by its earnings. Also did pretty well when it reported its Q2 earnings. That's when share price really just took off, up from 120 billion to about 132 billion in revenue. And so the shares just rose by 76%. That was in August when it announced that his revenue had grown that much. So investors rewarded it again with a better share price increase. So it's 261%, one of the best returns ever that Julius Berger has recorded. At least I've been tracking the stock market for years now, and I don't think I've seen Julius Berger done this well at all. Veritas Capital is next on the list at number 7. They returned 267% last year. That is also an insurance company. Remember I said a lot of insurance company did very well last year. So Veritas was one of those stocks. It's a penny stock, so you might not probably see the shares out that much, but for those investors that had it, they swam in money, man. 267%, 267.5% to be even specific. And the next up is RT Briscoe. So RT Briscoe, they led the pack for quite a while last year, but they ended up, pairing some of those gains, but still took the 6th spot at 309% return. This is a stock that started at about 61 kobo and then just rose all the way to about 3 naira in August and kind of like stayed there for a bit. But that was one of his best periods and kind of stood there, hung in there, and the end of the year at 309%. Not necessarily fundamentals driving the stock, but we kind of think there's a lot of internal, shareholder moves going on at RT Briscoe. So perhaps maybe expect some kind of announcement sometime this year or early this year for the stock. So those makes up the bottom 5 of the top 10 best performing stocks in Nigeria. Is any of these ones in your portfolio at all? Anyone that I've just mentioned right now? Anyway, so we're going to the top 5 best performing stocks in Nigeria last year. All right, so Tantalizers, they were in the news towards the end of last year. This was a stock that took a beating the first half of the year, but all of a sudden there was an injection of capital by an investor last year, and they just started making some solid moves. And now this fast food chain that was completely beat up for years has just seen a new lease of life. And they ranked 5th as the best performing stock, giving its shareholders a whopping 336% return in share price. This stock opened at about 47 kobo, at the beginning of the year, and has risen all the way to about 2 naira by the end of the year. So solid stuff for shareholders of Tantalizers. Tantalizers have been racking up losses for years, but investors kind of feel like this new injection of capital would help turn the fast food chain around, because it looks like a lot of fast food companies seem to be doing pretty well in Nigeria, and Tantalizers has a solid brand name. So this perhaps is why investors are rewarding that company with the sort of share price increases that we saw in 2024. Are they going to sustain that in 2025? You might want to find out if you continue to stick to Follow the Money. All right, so corn oil is next at number 4 at 361%. The downstream oil and gas player, one of the major oil and gas players in the sector, also did pretty well last year. Their numbers were good. They were backed by solid fundamentals. In fact, after their Q3 numbers, after their 2023 full year result, where profits after tax was up by almost 100%, investors started paying attention to the stocks. They also gained significantly by the third quarter. And no surprises here. They also ended with one of their best returns ever, closing at about 83.9 naira per share and gaining 361. So they actually started at 83 naira per share and then more than triple that number to about 361% last year. So if you're a corn oil shareholder, you had a fantastic year in 2024. Unicel, a company that manufactures polymeric and metallic products, it surfaced last year. Like they were like nobody kind of knew about what they were doing last year. But from all reckoning, the penny stock, they just showed up last year and gained 500%. Yeah, stock gained 500% last year. So you can imagine how well our top 10 stocks have done in 2024. And so this kind of shocked a lot of investors because we didn't know where this was coming from, especially some of us. It wasn't even in any of our stocks on our watch list or stocks that we recommend, but it was just incredible that Unicel did that well to gain 502% last year. Owando, of course, last year was a very major year for Owando. No surprises that they had that amazing end of year party that was much talked about because they had a lot to celebrate for that stock. The company released its results. They're gradually getting back into profitability after a decade of turmoil and stress for that company, but they've managed to turn things around with in the slew of acquisitions, particularly the acquisition of Nigerian Ajib Oil Company. And so investors rewarded Owando with a massive 528% return last year. Geez, this was a stock that was like 10 naira or so at the beginning of 2024 and then ended at about 6 naira. I know a lot of investors who probably came into the stocks about something years and years ago. But guys, it looks like they're gradually recovering, and I don't see how Owando steps back. It's like if it's going to keep going up at this rate. And of course, number one, the best performing stock in Nigeria in 2024 is not a stock that you're probably familiar with, not something that you've heard about a lot, but they were the best performing last year, and that is Sunu Assurance, I beg your pardon. So insurance companies, again, dominating the performance for stocks last year. Sunu Assurance gained 877% last year, so about 7-8 times or so return for its investors. So imagine if I put 10 million in this stock, you probably will be up 80 million at the moment, or 90 million at the moment. So good performance. So those basically make up the top 10 performing stocks on the Nigerian exchange last year. So do you have any real stocks in that portfolio? I'm sure you'll be wondering, where's banking stocks? I'm going to be talking about banking stocks later. There were some banking stocks that did pretty well last year. We have them on our list as well. The best, though, was Wema Bank at 62.5%, but you did have a number of banks. UBA, our sponsors here, did 33% last year return as well. So fantastic returns across board on Follow the Money today on this channel. Thank you so much. We've basically blew past our time. Watch out for a lot of things this year. We're going to be giving you a whole lot just beyond this show alone. You're going to be able to get our stock list on our website, which we're going to be launching later this month. But until we do this again, we meet you again next week. This has been Follow the Money, brought to you by Nairametrics. Signing out. Bye.